right, today we are joined by good friend of the podcast, the man of the summer, Brad Thor. Welcome back.
Hey, it's great being back. I'm sorry it's only with 50% of the team. I won't take it personally. I understand that it really was overwhelming reading the book for him, and he couldn't make it to the interview.
It knocked Chris out. It was such a heavy
Knocked him
hitter.
right out. No, I hope everything's okay with his grandma and stuff, so I'm sorry.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
hope that
thank you.
wasn't embargoed and I wasn't supposed to say anything.
No, that's fine. And I mean, honestly, he would want to be here so badly because he's the one who pushed us on the podcast once we finished Mitch Rapp to commit to Scott Harvath as our second character series. And now that we're done with all of them, I know he was rip-roaring ready to ask you some questions because we finished all the Scott Harvath books.
No, I saw.
It's a
Wow.
wrap.
Pretty impressive. Yeah. Well, we could.
Yeah.
It's finished. You could get another word other than rap. I think not using that one would be okay. It's a Mitch Rapp joke. That's even though it's with a W. I get it. It was just
when we finished season one. It's a wrap. It just got overused. I think we had many moments where that joke was resuscitated when it shouldn't have been. But yeah, Brad, what a book. I'm just going to start us off with some hot takes here. And okay. Hot take number one, this is the most enjoyable Brad Thor book. I'm saying it. I put my feet up. I actually finished it in 16 hours flat. Unbelievable. This one, it just goes down like a slice of apple pie with vanilla ice cream and a hot dog on the fourth, a good Sam Adams. This book is just so clean, so crisp.
I'm glad you liked it. I'm really glad you liked it. And that's high praise. I've been looking forward to doing this interview with you guys because you guys did a whole season of podcasts dedicated to each one of the books. So you really have a very, very thorough, in-depth knowledge of all the Harvath thrillers. So that's a very nice compliment. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I'm going to hit you with hot take number two. I think it's the most Flynnian Brad Thor book because we talked a little bit about Mitch Rapp. I felt like going to D.C., having this cabal of elites, these villains within our government, all manipulating, whether it's the CIA, the FBI, a senator, the White House with a vice president, and even a Russian asset. I just felt like this cast of characters was so Flynnian, and the way you brought us into D.C. politics, into the swamp, and you really have your finger on the pulse. Was that an intentional choice?
No, and I don't think it's Flynnian at all, to be honest with you. And I don't like the comparison, to be honest, because it suggests that somehow there's that was kind of the exclusive area that Vince wrote in, and it isn't. I mean, he took characters to Afghanistan and other places like that. People have been writing intrigue in DC for as long as they've been writing spy novels and stuff like that. The reason I did it in DC, and I've done other things. I've had multitudes of corrupt senators and things like that. And I mean, my God, my very first book started out with a corrupt vice president cooperating with the president being kidnapped on ski vacation. So I wanted to do so. Okay, we agreed that we can go for spoilers here, right?
Sure.
So,
yes.
All right. So if you have not read all the books, just understand there's going to be spoilers in here for Edge of Honor, but for other things too. So I'll tell you where I am with this. So you guys know that when I ended Near Dark, there was $100 million bounty on Harvath's head. Harvath's got one last guy to kill. This is the guy who was the godfather of the Russian president's son, who Harvath ended up killing to get even with the Russian president. There's a $100 million bounty on Harvath's head. He goes up to the hospital room because this guy, this Russian oligarch, his wife has been undergoing cancer treatments and stuff. You see her again in Shadow of Doubt. What you don't know at the end of Near Dark, when Harvath spares this guy's life, is that he agreed with the oligarch's wife to split the $100 million bounty that was on his head. She gets 50 million, he gets 50 million. You learn that in Shadow of Doubt because that's how Harvath is blackmailed into service by the CIA in Shadow of Doubt. So essentially what I created for Harvath by giving him that much money was I created what I call the supermodel problem. And in the 1990s, one of the famous supermodels, Linda Evangelista, said, I don't get out of bed for anything less than $100,000. And so Harvath's got a $50 million supermodel problem. Why? He's got a beautiful new wife. Everything's good, 6-month honeymoon. Why would you get out of bed? What's going to get Harvath out of bed? And that was the big thing that I struggled with. And so I thought, okay, it's got to be a friend who's in trouble. Now, I'm going to you have to be careful because that can get kind of tropey. You've got to really be careful how you do that. And so I thought about somebody I knew who had worked in a previous administration that had gotten a lot of death threats and who wasn't able to get a security detail once he was on the outside of government. And I thought, okay, that's really interesting. Now, a lot of that stuff actually broke in real life while I was finishing up the editing for the book. Like back in February, you heard that Mike Pompeo's security detail got
Right.
stripped,
Yeah.
and there were a couple of other people, John Bolton. So if you look back in my Facebook, I talked to David Brown, my publicist, and I said, I want to plant a little flag here so people don't think that I actually based the whole book on something that happened in February. So if you look back at my posts, I planted a flag where I have the story and I say, I link to like the Washington Post or something or Wall Street Journal and say, this is Harvest dealing with something very similar in Edge of Honor. So the idea was bring him back to the U.S. I knew this book was going to pub. I wanted it to pub the same week as 4th of July, big patriotic cover. And I wanted to do just a really red, white, and blue patriotic thriller. And for me, there was no place better than to set it in the nation's capital right before the
Yeah.
nation's birthday. And so that's how all that stuff came together. And it's a different book. I'm not bouncing around country to country and stuff like that. It's not as international as some of the other books are. But it had been a while since I had like such a strong setting in the U.S. I mean, Hidden Order's got a lot of Boston in it. I've done stuff before, a lot of, I think Takedown obviously was all in New York,
Yeah. New York.
during the
Yeah.
4th of July weekend. So
Sure.
this is kind of this is my second like big 4th of July thriller. Takedown was the first
That's
and then
true.
this one. Yeah. And then the First Commandment was, pretty much all in the United States, although there was a side story where this guy was in Turkey and then he comes up into the
Right.
US through Mexico and stuff like that.
And don't forget Lines of Lucerne, the slopes,
Well, yeah,
the slopes
I
in
mean,
Utah.
yeah. Oh, I was thinking predominantly set in the
Sure,
United
sure,
States
sure.
versus,
That's
I mean,
just such
Lions
an
of Lucerne
iconic.
starts,
Yeah.
starts in the U.S. and has Park City and then has D.C. and then Harvath is gone to Europe, to Germany
Right.
and Switzerland and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That definitely sets this book apart with the DC focus. Another thing, though, that you do so well, and I think you time very well, is this almost single story. Yes, there's a lot of different competing storylines here that are balanced perfectly. Solvi, the Norwegians, when we need her to come in and be the badass hero that she is, we get that scene on the Dulles Toll Road, which might have been my favorite action scene here. But you tend to have these really, really killer books every 5 or 6 that are focused on one thing. The way this is in DC, I feel like The Apostle did that. It was the Afghanistan book. And the way Backlash did it, it was the Siberia, book. It was the Russia book. And I feel like this being the DC book, those are each spaced out. I feel like that's such a great move because it's a refresh from all the traveling heavy and the globetrotting that we're doing the other ones. It just shows your skill set is so varied.
I appreciate that. I disagree with you guys on that. I get it that that's your opinion. I think they're all killer books. I don't
Sure.
set out to pace, and there is no, it is, I get an idea for a book. I pour my heart and soul into it. I bleed to get the book done, try to make it as exciting as possible, and then, get it out there. And, every individual has an individual experience with the books. And probably the coolest way I can describe it is I've got an amusement park. And each book is a ride at the amusement park. Now, I love going to Universal with my kids, and there are rides that I'll go on again and again and again because they're my favorites. And there's rides that I've tried once that I won't go back to. So I suppose when you've got 25 books, you just have one book. Either people are going to like it, there's people that Lions of Lucerne is always going to be their favorite because that was the first one right out of the gate.
Yeah,
so, but for me, it is like an amusement park where every year I'm coming out with a new ride and I'm trying to do something different and I'm trying to dial it up. And there's a lot of stuff that I do behind the scenes that you may never even notice. There's little turns of the screwdriver. There's I'm setting down the paper on the drafting table a little bit differently than I normally do. It's a little bit tilted this way instead of that way, and I'm going to come at designing the ride this way. So that's probably the biggest challenge as a franchise character writer is coming at it and doing. One of the nicest reviews I ever got was, I forget this gentleman's name. He's a writer as well, but he said that what I do, Brad Thor, every year is I climbed the same mountain peak. Let's call it the Matterhorn, just for fun, because
Mhm.
that was a code name a few books back.
Sure. A
So
good
let's
one
say
too.
climbing the Matterhorn, but every year I'm doing it via a different face. I'm
Yeah.
still going up to the top. It's just I mount the mountain differently every time.
And you know that's a real interesting thing you say, because one thing I wanted to ask you about was this almost police procedural, because you've done this a number of times. Carolyn and Fields are just, and we had them last book. What a joy when we can cut away to them. And it's like, as much as I
Right
want
next to
Harveth,
you.
as much as I want Solvi, you're packing our plate full of those two. We're getting everything we want out of them. But then when we step away from them, sometimes books can get a little disappointing. Like, bring me back to what I love. Well, no, I love those guys. I want to be with them. And then when they get a chance to cross paths, and the role they've been playing is central to helping Scott, get that final guy. I love that. So did you have fun writing these two? Because their banter with Sugar
Yeah.
Bear and these nicknames and this playful talk. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you have so many contacts inside the FBI. This must be what it's like to be on the job.
There's a lot of it. There's a lot of gallows humor and
Sure.
stuff because what people see, whether it's in law enforcement, whether it's in the military, they see so much pain and so much suffering and stuff that they arrive after the fact, after the evil has been there and done its thing, and they're left to pick up the pieces and track down what the evil was and that kind of a thing. So you do need a good sense of humor to survive. I don't think people I think people turn to other things if they don't have a good sense of humor, and that can be very unhealthy.
Well, yeah, sure.
So but it's fun. It's fun for me. I love the interaction of those characters, and I mean, I really love the way Fields makes her boss uncomfortable. I really, really
Sure.
enjoy that, and the fact that he cuts her a lot of slack, and she's good, and
She has the
she's got
goods. Yeah.
yeah, and she's got nothing but runway in front of her. He's nearing the end of his career at the FBI and stuff, and it's just it's fun, and it's fun to see him. He kind of represents old guard FBI for me. A lot of the people that I knew growing up who were at the FBI, who were, man, if I even used a four-letter word around him, I'd be in
Ooh.
so much trouble.
Yeah.
That kind of Hoover holdover stuff.
Kyle Mills' father.
Well, that's exactly who I'm talking about. Is not Kyle's dad. No, Kyle's dad was. I wouldn't worry about my language around Kyle's dad, but some of Kyle's dad's colleagues, and that's how I know. That's how I know Kyle, is because one of my dad's dear friends was in the bureau and was best friends with Kyle's dad. So that's how we know each other. And there'd be this big FBI conference every summer, and so Kyle and I would see each other there. But yeah, there were some of the guys of that age group, and yeah, if I dropped a salty word, boy, I heard about it. I was taken to task.
Another one of these guys is Bob McGee. And
Yeah.
after the events of, I guess, Spy Master, Backlash, a few other books after that, I feel like almost Carolyn and Fields have that same vibe Bob McGee and Lydia Ryan had early on. I know
Yeah.
they're the
Yeah.
CIA end of things, but
Yeah.
just these teammates, these partners with this mutual respect for each other. And we lost Lydia Ryan, so young. I thought she
Uh-huh.
had a bright future. I kind of see Fields filling that gap, and it's really great to have a character like that. And it just goes to another strong point of a Brad Thor book: female characters, strong female
Oh, thank
characters.
you.
I know you've told us in the past that's important to you, and this book again knocks that out of the park. And it's not just Solvi; it's also Fields.
Well, it's important to me. I have a daughter. I want to write characters that she's going to admire and look up to and want to aspire to be like. And I'm surrounded by really smart, very talented women with good cores who know what the right thing to do is and take that path no matter how hard it is. So it's really an homage to the women that I respect and care about in my life: my editor, my agent, my wife, my daughter. I mean, I'm blessed to be surrounded by so many brilliant women. And then it's the brilliant women that I've met in law enforcement, the military, the diplomatic corps. I mean, I've been very lucky to meet some real tough, really smart women who going to get the job done no matter what it takes, and I respect that.
Yeah. And another hallmark of a Brad Thor mountain, I like the Matterhorn analogy. You always have these team ups, and I can think of the team ups going back to Takedown with Bullet Bob, going back to Apostle with all the guys, the operators downrange in Afghanistan. Well, here you're almost bringing back the old timers. Like I said, Bob McGee, Mike Haney, we know he's been injured. And even Brendan Rodgers, that was a callback to Backlash. That was so
Mm-hmm.
much fun having the
Yeah.
hostage czar come back, who saved Scott. Scott kind of owes him one. You had amazing callbacks that you mentioned gimmicks that could come. Oh no, tropey. You said tropey. And
Mm-hmm.
for some writers, they don't always nail that. It's like
You
you're
have to be
reaching back
careful.
to something that doesn't exactly connect. This was authentically, reasonably laid out and just made me jump for joy. That's why I said this is the
Good.
most enjoyable book. The biggest callback,
Yeah.
Nicholas.
Back to the first night
Brad.
Harvath and Nicholas met, right?
He
I
rode
knew
the
I had to
dog
bring that.
again.
Yeah, I had to bring that back. I had to
Were
bring
you
that
doing
back.
that for the fans? Because I lost my
Yeah, it
mind
was
with
like the
that.
ultimate. I know he's such a fan favorite, and it was something that he'd never done again. We never saw that again after the first time he did it. And I was like,
Right.
okay, this would be really cool. And technology wise, I was at a point in that book where I needed something, and that actually would have worked,
It
to
checked
be
out.
honest
It
with you.
checked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just it just turned out to be kind of a good. I didn't think I want to do this with Nicholas and then backed into it via the tech. The tech came first and I was like, how do you defeat this? And I'm like, that's how we're going to do it. I've always wanted to bring
Yeah.
Nicholas back and have him do that trick again. So that was kind of fun.
I was a little concerned when we learned that Scott was the point guy for the Carlton group in protecting this house, this River Edge estate. I was like, if the Carlton group put this together with Scott in the lead, it's impermeable. There's no getting past this. And to have the dog fool the AI detectors who, let the deer through and other wildlife,
Yeah,
absolute brilliant move.
it's
Brilliant.
kind of fun. By the way, that house actually exists. It's just north of Mount Vernon, and just north of that is actually where Nicholas posts up and parks his van, the Horticulture Society of America.
Yes, I've been
So
there.
it's
Yeah.
so you've been there. All right. So so it's kind of cool. The house actually that Harvath hits is for sale. So there's tons of pictures of it on Zillow. There's a lot of times, and like Brendan
Huh.
Rodgers' house in this book that's just south
Right in
of
McLean.
Langley in McLean, that place was for sale. So a lot of times I'll go on Zillow when I'm looking for like a really cool house, and I'll pick it and I'll map everything out. So those two places, both Brendan Rodgers' place and then the estate that Harvath has to hit, are both places that were for sale as I was writing the book.
That's incredible. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
when
kind
you
of a fun thing.
mentioned River's Edge was the house, I was like,
Mhm.
this is sounding an awful lot like River Farm, which is the Horticultural Society. And then you told us it was right next to it. I was like, Brad's got his finger on it. I've been in DC
Right.
almost 20 years, and every time I read a book that gets DC and the surrounding area right, it's so refreshing. And obviously, the area so well yourself. Everything checked out, and even new neighborhoods like the Wharf, how they were
Oh yeah, I
having
love
lunch
the wharf.
at the
I
Wharf.
love the
Yeah.
and how about Harvath wanting to have plenty of antibiotics once he got out of the river?
Oh, of course. That's very accurate.
That's totally accurate.
At least he wasn't swimming in the Anacostia, though, because that's
Oh
where
God, no, no,
antibiotics aren't even going to save you there.
no, 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 no.
Restaurants, too. We know you're a foodie, and we know
Yep.
Scott and Nicholas are foodies. Hank's
Hmm.
Oyster Bar and
Yep.
Pisco y Nasca, are those two of your favorites in D.C.?
There are two places that I like. I mean, I really like the Wharf. I think what they did at the Wharf is way,
That's great.
way cool. I spent some time there over the winter, so it was really, in the fall too. Yeah, so I love that whole area, and there's just all those cool restaurants along the Wharf, and there's a Politics and Prose bookstore over there as
Sure.
well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of a neat place. So I like that area. So I like to put places that I've been. That's half the fun. Yeah.
And right across from the Wharf, if you're on the Wharf, you're eating, you're looking out, you see Haynes Point, East Potomac Park. One,
Mm-hmm.
really cool setting, a National Park Service park, really cool setting for a thriller one day. But there's also a golf course there. And so looking at the Wharf,
Oh,
playing
that's
golf,
cool.
it's, yeah. I just still can't believe you had Nicholas ride the dog. I can't get over it.
It's really sticking with you. That's good. I'm
I'm,
glad I did my job then. That's
yeah, I
awesome.
nearly lost my mind with that one. But you know who else sticks with you? The villains. We talked a
Good.
little bit about it, but we see on social media your amazing blog posts, 5 Fast Facts. But one of my favorite themes of Brad Thor social media is Straight Out of the Straight
Oh,
Outta
yeah.
series.
Yeah, that's fun.
When everyone or yourself reposts an article that something is ripped right from the headlines, right from your books into the headlines,
Mm-hmm.
I have a list here of 7 or 8 things that
Wow.
happened. It's just unbelievable. I'm reading this, and a NATO summit Just this
Mm-hmm.
morning, I'm seeing all these clips of a press conference regarding NATO and so much in the last election cycle, turning on a president for not staying true to campaign ideals when a populist president gets into office and has to
This
actually deal with
faction
the
does,
swamp.
yeah.
That's
Mm-hmm.
the VP says America first in his speech as he's trying to usurp power. The podcast, the Coughlin podcast, was a real interesting take because just look at the last election cycle, the influence of Joe Rogan or Theo Von and these other new media. When are we going to see you on Joe Rogan?
I don't know. I'm not a big Rogan guy. I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever be on there. I mean, I don't have a problem with him either way. I just don't know what I don't know if he's a big book guy and he likes to talk thriller books. I'm not sure. I'll say one of the things that I really prided myself on in this book, and the first review we got for it was very complimentary. That when there isn't politics. There isn't taking
Mm.
one side. It was right down the middle so that this book can be enjoyable for everyone. And that Coughlin podcaster guy is actually based on a really terrible radio show host from decades and decades and decades ago, from like the 30s or 40s, Father Coughlin, who was a real demagogue and a bad guy that they ran out of the radio business, who was very, very damaging for American culture and things like that. So that's where that last name comes
Mm.
from for that guy. So that's a little Easter eggy type thing that's in there. So this idea that this guy is trying to rile people up. I've always been fascinated by the French Revolution and the different factions, particularly the Jacobins, and this desire to force through a change to say the people are too dumb to vote, so we're going to take matters into our own hands and we're going to force what we want onto the rest of the country. And that was the inspiration for Edge of Honor, that there is this shadowy cabal. They, as you said, there's a new administration. This is the youngest president since Kennedy. He was very popular, and he gets in. And part of it, I'm going to actually admit this, came from Dennis Miller, the comedian.
Hmm.
Okay. Do you remember? You're probably, I don't know if you're too young to remember
No,
Dennis Miller, the
sure. I've
comedian.
seen him. He was on the Bill O'Reilly,
Yeah, he was on
circuit earlier.
O'Reilly
Yeah,
all the
sure.
time. So he used
Yeah.
to have a really good joke about what he thought first day in the Oval Office was like for a new president. You get to hop on Air Force One, you go out to Area 51, you get to give the alien that they have laying on the slab there a purple nurple, and then you go back to the White House and they drop this binder in your lap that shows you how serious the world is and all the stuff that's your responsibility. So this, I was looking for a way. How do I have a faction that's maneuvering on the inside to basically collapse an administration and put their own administration in charge? Very Jacobin. And this is what I thought of, is to have this group want to basically weaken a new young president who was elected despite October surprises and all this kind of stuff, who was super, super popular. And so that's where the idea came from. It wasn't like a Trump thing. It was I really wanted to figure out how to shoehorn in factions. And that's why the epigraph at the beginning of the book, I actually took from George Washington's farewell address, because Washington worried and warned us about the dangers of factions
Yep.
and what a tyranny one faction oppressing other factions can become. And I mean, it goes back and forth. So today
Yep.
you're the oppressor, tomorrow you're the oppressed.
That's right.
So that idea of a bunch of power hungry people who think, the voters are stupid, we know what's best for them. And even though they voted for this one group with this one political party, we're going to force our will on the rest of the country. And we don't care how many people die in the process. So that was the idea for Edge of Honor.
And that worked, and that played out. And
Thank you.
I mean, look at something like the filibuster, right? One party gets in power and all of a sudden wants to remove that as a mechanism. What are you going to do with the next election cycle or two or three?
Shoes
When
on the other foot.
party. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're seeing that more and more, and it's not a good path to go down. And that's a great quote from Washington.
It's a great quote from Washington. And I want people to have just a really fast, fun beach read. Take it to the lake, take it to the pool, take it to the beach, and just keep turning those pages and those crisp, short, cinematic chapters. So that kind of stuff was fun for me to, listen, you can never go wrong making politicians the bad guys.
Yeah,
There isn't a big contingency out there that's going to be upset by that, So
Sure.
It's
Sure,
fun.
it takes me back to the smoking room in, Lions of Lucerne opening up
Yeah.
with the senators and the oil
At
executives.
Senator Fawcett's estate in Lake
Exactly,
Geneva. Yeah, that they're sitting
exactly,
there discussing basically they're gonna kidnap the president to push through to remove the president from the scene so that the vice president will, pass
right.
the deciding vote for their piece of legislation. Yeah.
And speaking of the politics of it all, the other quote in the book that floored me was right after the VP gives the America First speech, clearly wants to usurp things, and Senator Blackwood is sitting there and says, "But will it play in Peoria?" And I'm
Yeah,
just
that's an old
like,
expression, yeah.
these characters are, it's that kind of BS and that political speak. Like I said earlier, Vince Flynn's books were always the politicians, the bad guys. We even said they were the secondary villains. The cabal of villains here is phenomenal. And another thing you said was these crisp chapters. I noticed that right from the beginning. I was wondering why. Like I said, I finished this book in 16 hours. I started at 10 p.m. one night, didn't go to bed till 2 a.m.
My
I was like,
gosh,
I know
wow.
I don't put these books down, but this one is sucking me in even more than
Good,
usual. And
good.
it was the crisp, quick chapters that just kept me on my feet, kept me on my toes. And not to mention that opening action scene. What was it? Did you get to see our post? I took the book over to,
Yes, I reshared it.
yeah,
I've been waiting to bring that up here. I thought it was fantastic. I don't think I'll ever be invited back to the Norwegian ambassador's residence again. I've been there a couple times inside, but I've probably, with doing what I did in the book, who knows what's going to happen. I'm sure it's fine. I mean, I'm sure they love, having Norway feature so prominently in the book. And I certainly love writing about them because I think they're such a cool NATO partner and that's such a cool part of the world and
sure.
such a beautiful campus that they have for the ambassador's residence. And you did such a great job. If no one has seen it, they need to look at what you filmed to actually show that intersection because you really do have the papal embassy and across the street, across 34th, you've got the Norwegian ambassador's residence, and behind that, the embassy down 34th. And then right across the street from the two is the Naval Observatory where the vice president's residence is. And I thought, okay, this is really interesting. And I wanted to make these guys so bad, the bad guys, that they'd attack their own supporters to
Yeah,
get their
exactly.
people riled up, that they would sacrifice and just murder their own people who were at a protest. So yeah, that was wild. I've been at that intersection so many times, and I'm sitting there thinking, wow, it'd be wild if a bomb went off here or somebody started shooting. And
And
so
another added element is how, and I don't know the protocols and the rules of engagement, but you've got so much police presence there, yet I don't know. Would the Secret Service leave the premises
no,
of the compound? No, they wouldn't, right? Even if it's another embassy,
not that
even if it's a
it's not their
protest.
job. It's
It's
not their
exactly,
job.
exactly,
Because how do you know it's not a ruse to pull
exactly.
you out?
Flush you out.
Like,
Exactly.
and then they go in and they attack the vice president's residence. So their job is to stay there. Unfortunately, that's not their job, man. So yeah, so that was the I had to make sure that readers understood that because it's like, why didn't those guys move? They don't care about the American people,
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
No,
It's
it
like,
made sense.
that's not their job, dude. It's like if my babysitter hears a car alarm going off 2 blocks down, she doesn't get to
No,
leave my kids, you know,
exactly.
in front of a boiling pot of water for macaroni and cheese while she goes and figures out why a car alarm's going off. That's not her job.
No,
So
completely. And the fact
yeah,
that you explained that so well, it made sense. Like everything in this book, it all checked out. It all kept the plot moving. And I think balance, like I said before, I think this book is just so well balanced. Even the competing storylines, because it was equally fun wondering about Senator Blackwood and his mistress. And being a thriller reader of all these years, I was like, I know something's fishy with her. I don't know what it's going to be. And then
right.
that meet in Woodley Park, yet
Yep.
another DC neighborhood.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
school's right, like I said, near Politics and Prose, just a few miles away from Woodley Park. Another neighborhood you described just
Close to the
absolutely
zoo.
perfectly. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and thank you. So it's fun, and I mean that apartment building that they met in exists. It's a legit apartment building and stuff, and yeah, it was just kind of fun to just all of a sudden have her handler go, "Boop, you're leaving. You're what? You're leaving. You're out. We're pulling you."
Shocking.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was just fun, and I don't outline my books. I mean, I'm very organic, very instead of a plotter, I'm a pantser. So it's very much seat of pants. So every day I come in, I don't know what's gonna happen in the story till I sit down and I'm working on it. So, yeah, I mean, that was a lot of fun doing that kind of a switch right at the end there. like that.
Yeah. And that is kind of when the climactic action is building. We're kind of racing to this finish line, whether it's taking down the white nationalists. I mean, you're writing
Mhm.
about this Iron Tree group, and in my mind, I'm just visualizing, you know, the Shenandoah, Appalachia, and different places, and how these people are so radicalized.
And
And in the like the Patriot Front, these marching groups with their khakis, and I'm thinking all these guys with their
live
tattoos,
in
like they
Nashville.
exist.
Those
Yeah,
guys are on our
yeah,
streets
they
all the
exist.
effing time, these guys.
Yeah,
So
so much fun
it's
taking them down.
yeah,
Watching
it
everybody
was a
come
lot of
together
fun.
to take them down was fun.
The background information when you have Carolyn and Fields discussing kind of this lost boy syndrome, where these people are economically disadvantaged, they're not seeing the rise in wages that their parents and their grandparents saw. When I talk about this being the first generation that's not as upwardly mobile, all that stuff is legit real stuff. And it does make people susceptible to certain messages. So, we used to worry about homegrown jihadism, people that would get radicalized online by foreign Muslim preachers and things like that. We have another kind of problem with radicalism here. It doesn't mean that every white person's a neo-Nazi and all that kind of stuff, but the ground is very fertile in certain pockets for people who are angry, that don't understand what's going on. All they know is that the system doesn't seem to be looking out for them, doesn't care for them. So there's an ability there to kind of work people through. One of my favorite things, though, and a couple of people have commented on it from the book, that I actually laughed at when I was writing it. If I laugh at my own joke, and I don't often laugh at my own jokes, but if I do, it's when they go up to the house of that one white nationalist, that Iron Tree guy who left, who they threatened, if you
With
leave,
his
blah blah blah
son.
blah blah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in the
and
hospital.
yeah, with the son in the hospital, and so they go up, and Carolyn sees like the Confederate flag on the door, and asks Fields if she
You
wants to
knock.
stand in front of him
Yeah.
and knock.
Yeah, that was good. That was a great touch. And he can say that because of how much they give each other the business. Like,
It
I love that.
starts in That starts in chapter 5 when
Yeah,
he
exactly.
makes a comment about the X-Files, and
Yep.
she's like, she goes, "What, black people can't watch the X-Files?" And he
Watch it.
goes, "Jesus, not again."
No, you're
That's
too
like his
young
line,
to
"Not
watch the
again."
X-Files. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It's not a black
exactly.
white thing. You're too young. But I
Yeah,
loved when he was just like, "Oh, Jesus, here we go. Not again." It's like she's trying to pin him down, and she does it on
yep,
purpose. She needles him. She knows he doesn't care what color her skin is, but she pretends like it's a big deal, which
exactly.
just and it's like she makes fun of him with the coffee orders all the time to embarrass him. And it's
Yes,
just
yes.
like he drinks frilly coffee and he just drinks it black. But she announces, some very, very, I don't want to call them feminine coffee orders, but some coffee orders that a guy that
Sure.
big at the FBI, you would not think he drinks. And he doesn't, but she loves to embarrass him.
You can't beat Sugar Bear, though. When she gives him the Sugar Bear, that is just the ultimate nickname. That one better stick. That one, that's the one that sticks.
Yeah.
And the second
Yeah.
everyone else at the Bureau finds out about it,
Here's that.
that's,
That's what they're going to
that's
call him. Exactly. Exactly. So,
so much fun in this book. But a big kind of element we're missing here is that after Shadow of Doubt, things could have gone a number of ways because
mhm.
they're married, Scott and Solvey.
Could have been the end of Harvath. It could have just been the end. They rode off into the sunset, and that was
That's right.
it.
That was it. And there's so many times earlier in the series, too, where we think he's stepping away or he's looking for this other part of his life to settle down. And him finding Solvey was so important in the series. And then I just go, but how will they operate together? And I think this book really solves that problem that comes up in a lot of thrillers is how do you have an apex predator be vulnerable with a significant other?
Mm.
And I think the two of them are just a match. It's a perfect match. And I was wondering where you go with it. And this book, I think, was a perfect, again, balance of
Thank you.
them being on the same team.
Yeah, it was fun to do that. And Harvath, ever since she was introduced, has said, the only advantage that he has over her is that he's been at it longer. So he has more
Right.
experience. But in his estimation, he's said this repeatedly. She's smarter. She's got better instincts. She's more capable, more talented. I mean, he's been very generous in his opinion of her. Again, the only thing he's got that she doesn't is a lot more experience. It's because he's older than her and he's been at it longer. So he has a lot
Yeah.
of respect for her abilities and everything. And I love the fact that they're both so broken, that they've had really bad personal lives up to this point. So the idea of them finding each other, people like, it moved really fast. And I'd be like, you'd be surprised, people who have had it rough, if they find something that good, they grab onto it with both hands. I've seen it happen. If they're smart enough to realize they've got something great and that it might not ever come along again, you grab it as hard as you can. And they both did. God bless him. It wasn't him chasing her or her chasing him. They both realized, and they were just like, "Eff it, we'll make it work." And we go back to where was it? It was the end of. I'm looking at my books here. That's why I'm looking off camera. But I think about Rising Tiger and how many that came after Near Dark. So the end of Near Dark or the beginning of Near Dark, basically the Carlton Group was going, "You're out of vacation days, dude. You either
Yeah.
you either submit your resignation or get back here." So that was always going to be a problem. Was kind of that geographic issue between the two of them, and how do they maintain a
Yeah.
relationship? So,
And Near Dark, she came on so strong, and then Rising Tiger and even Deadfall to a point, I'm wondering what role does she have to play in his life? And
mhm.
they worked through that, and they had to get through that, and now they can be a little more settled, just like this book being a July 4th DC-based book. Everything seems to be settling into place as it should once we got the villains out of the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Bob McGee, not to quote an author back to himself, but Bob McGee says, quote, "Life is all about the timing, especially
It's
in this line
true.
of work." So
True. Bob McGee, I went through the police academy in Illinois, and Bob McGee is a combination of two instructors that I had at the police academy. Very, very funny, flippant men who'd seen a lot, were very um, wise, very worldly, and had seen the worst of what mankind was capable of in their careers in law enforcement. And so it's funny because that character is oftentimes an homage to these two instructors that I liked very, very much. I was a writer at the time, and there's a program in Illinois where you can do it like the National Guard, and you can go on the weekends. And there's some online stuff, so you don't have to sit in classroom stuff all the time. But it just takes longer than if you went to the academy for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it may be. And it was funny because about a third of the way through, I'd find, like, with the online course material, there'd be like massive typos that would actually change the question. And I
mm,
get the question wrong. And I'm like, no, 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 I got the question right. And eventually they Googled me. It's really funny. They hadn't Googled me up to that point. And so for the rest of my time at the police academy, they called me Castle, like that TV show where the writer's working with the detective. And his name
okay.
is Castle, and he wears the raid vest that says writer. It doesn't even say police, it says writer. And the TV show was called Castle. So for the rest of my time there, they called me Castle. Put your
You should
hand
wear
down,
an
Castle.
FBI windbreaker that says author on the back
Author on the back. Yeah, the
instead
big
of
blue
FBI.
windbreaker with
Yeah.
gold on it. Author, exactly.
Author.
Yeah,
You're
pretty funny.
investigating the crime scene to write a book, not to, solve
Yeah,
the mystery.
exactly, exactly.
Well, Brad, this has been a lot of fun. Everyone who listened to this has already read Edge of Honor, so go out there, give it a 5-star review,
Oh,
repost, get
thank
the
you.
word out there that this is not only the book of the summer, this is the book of 2025. So far, it's my favorite, and I think it will withstand the next, 6 months or so.
Wow.
Yeah, great book.
Wow, I'm honored. Thank you. And listen, you guys are always like, I don't know anybody who pulls less punches than you guys do. You're always very honest. It's all very fair. But I really respect both of you guys for how much attention you take, how much care you take. And I mean, it is wild for me to sit and listen to your podcast about my own books. But it's
Mm.
it's just so great. It's like having this very intelligent focus group, and to hear what you like, what worked, what didn't necessarily work for you. And you guys don't always agree. I mean, right down
No,
to
we don't.
covers. I
That's
mean, you
right.
guys look at the international covers and all that kind of stuff. So just know, as an author, I appreciate the hell out of you.
Hey, I'm glad to hear that, and I hope you don't take it too personally because we know how
No.
much you pour yourself into the books. But that's why we do it. We think we see a lot online of the cheerleading, and we're glad that a lot of media and interviews help spread the word because ultimately
Hmm.
we too want that as fans, as more authors being supported in their craft, pushing more content so that we can enjoy it. But at the same time, we think when something's good, it deserves critique or it deserves your full attention. And so we want to dig into it instead of just, post this is the greatest book ever, be a prisoner
Sure.
of the moment,
Sure.
favorite one in the series every year. One, you'll lose credibility. And two, if it's not, it's still a very good book to enjoy, and it might play its role in the series, and it might have a message and a story to tell. It doesn't need to be the best one. It might do something unique to advance the characters, in our opinion, and that's really important overall if you look at the series. So I think this one is right up there. Phenomenal book.
Thank you.
Loved it. And the last thing I got to ask you is, you did have a dark blue 2010 Malibu, right? That was your favorite car you ever owned?
No, I never owned a Chevy Malibu, but that was another. Listen, you can tell I had fun writing this book.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so that, getting that car that didn't have the air conditioning, and it's my 25th book, for crying out loud. I'm like, if I can't have fun now at this point in my career, still deliver, and I'm thrilled to hear how much you enjoyed the book, but I'm able to, take the work seriously, but not necessarily take myself that serious. And that was the key here, was to have fun, which is weird if you're building an amusement park and you're having fun while you're building the ride. But I had a lot of fun building this ride. So I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed it. It's all that matters. That's the most important thing, actually.
That old Chesterton quote, "Why can angels fly? They take themselves so lightly." Gotta enjoy it.
That's a great quote. Great
I
quote.
probably butchered it, but Chesterton's the master of that. All right, Brad, great to have you on. As always, appreciate everything you do, and thanks for spending the time on Thriller Pod.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Good luck with the tour.
Thanks.
Got to thank our patrons, including our special deputy director, Sherry F., our special operator, Jason C., our special agents, Ben, Daryl, Kevin, George, Matt, Don, Peggy, Mark, and Chris. Subscribe, rate, and review to all 3 seasons of No Limits. You can find us at thrillerpod.com or on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, just let Scott be Scott.